Hello and welcome to Grave Humanity Podcast. I am your host, Ches, and this is episode 4. And I am so sorry that it has been over a month and a half since I have been able to release episode 4. Little backstory, I was prepared kind of to start releasing them on a weekly basis. And then I got really busy with the holidays, with family coming in to visit, with my kid and his school and his sports. And then on top of that, I started to fall behind on certain projects that I was hoping to accomplish within a certain time frame, and just everything kind of started getting pushed back further and further. And because I started feeling very overwhelmed, and when I feel overwhelmed, I get really tired, and I'm pretty sure it's like part of my ADHD, is where I'm like, I know I need to finish certain things, but instead of finishing what I need to, I end up sleeping or playing on my phone or watching movies with my kid. And so I got into kind of a routine where I like started panicking when I needed to release like an episode. And instead of releasing it or doing research, I would just not do it. And so this new year, Happy New Year 2024, let's get it. I am New Year's resolution. I am going to try and set myself a schedule so I'm more on top of things, so I don't feel overwhelmed, nor do I put things off at the absolute last minute until I need to. And so I'm not as stressed out during these projects. And I have so many things that I'm trying to accomplish this year that I actually really need to do better about scheduling and where I'm putting myself at certain times. And so with that, I know this is late and I know this is not a Tuesday, but I am trying to get back on top of it. So I'm releasing this episode a couple days late this week. Better late than never, because it's already about a month and a half late. To get kind of in the swing of things and to start off my New Year's right. So, without further ado, let's do the damn thing. Ronald Gene Simmons. Ronald was born on July 15, 1940, in Chicago, Illinois. Loretta and William Simmons was his mother and father. William, his father, unfortunately died of a stroke on January 31st, 1943, about 3 years after Ronald was born. Loretta remarried within a year to William D. Griffin, a civil engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In 1946, they got stationed to Little Rock, Arkansas, first of multiple stations. September 15, 1957, Ronald dropped out of school and joined the U.S. Navy. He was first stationed at Naval Station Bremerton in Washington. He met Bersabe Rebecca or Becky Ilibari. They got married in New Mexico, July 9, 1960. Over the course of 18 years, they had 7 children. 1963, Ronald left the Navy, then 2 years later decided to join the Air Force. In his 20-year military career, he was awarded the Bronze Star Medal, as well as the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross. He retired from the Air Force on November 30th, 1979, as a Master Sergeant, or as an E7. On April 3, 1981, Ronald was being investigated by Cloudcroft, New Mexico Department of Human Services due to the allegation that his 17-year-old daughter had his child and he had been sexually abusing her. He was afraid of being arrested and fled New Mexico in late 1981, eventually ending up in Dover, Arkansas in the summer of 1983. He settled down on a 13-acre property and called it Mockingbird Hill. The property consisted of 2 mobile homes with no indoor plumbing or landline. They had a makeshift privacy fence that was about 10 feet tall in some places. Because of the plumbing issue, Ronald made his family and his kids dig 3 cesspits around the property. Now, I googled what cesspit was because I wasn't 100% sure, and the Oxford Dictionary says that it's just basically a pit for the disposal of liquid waste and sewage. December 22nd, 1987, in the morning, Ronald decided to murder his family. His wife and oldest son Gene were the first to go by bludgeoning with a crowbar and then shooting them with a .22 caliber pistol. His next victim was his granddaughter, 3-year-old Barbara, who was killed by strangulations. Ronald dumped his first 3 victims into one of the cesspits that they had dug. Then, Ronald waited for the rest of his kids to get home from school for Christmas break. When they got home, he told them that he had Christmas presents for each of them, but only wanted to give one at a time. He pulled his 17-year-old daughter, Loretta, first, whom he strangled and held under the water in a rain barrel. He then murdered Eddie, Mariana, and Becky all in the same way, then dumped in a cesspit. December 26th, Ronald had invited his older kids over for the holidays, and around midday that same day, they started to arrive. Ronald first killed his son Billy and his wife Renata, who he shot in the head. Then he strangled and drowned their 20-month-old son, Trey. Ronald then shot and killed his oldest daughter, Sheila, who he had sexually abused, and her husband, Dennis. He then strangled his daughter, by Sheila, 7-year-old Sylvia Gale, and finally his grandson, Michael, who was almost 2 years old. Ronald then laid the bodies of his now deceased family lined up in a neat row in their lounge. He covered them with coats, except Sheila, whom he covered with their best tablecloth. Trey and Michael were wrapped in plastic sheeting and were abandoned in cars at the end of the road. After the murders, Ronald went to Sears and picked up the Christmas gifts he had ordered for his family. After he picked the Christmas gifts up, he went to a local bar for a beer before returning home to continue drinking and watching TV. December 28th, Ronald drove to Walmart in Russellville and purchased another firearm. He stopped at a law firm where he had previously met a secretary, Kathy Cribbins Kendricks, whom he had become obsessed with, but she turned him down. Ronald walked into the building and shot and killed Kathy. Next, he stopped by an oil company office where he intended to kill the owner, Russell, or Rusty, Taylor. Rusty also owned the mini-mart Ronald had recently quit from. Ronald shot and wounded Rusty before killing another person in the building, James David Chafin. He is the only victim who is not known to Ronald who died. There is one more person who was shot at but missed. Ronald drove to the mini-mart where he shot and wounded 2 more people. His last stop was the office Woodland Motor Freight Company. He shot his previous supervisor twice, but only wounding her. He then ordered an employee at gunpoint and had him call the police. He surrendered without a fight. This all happened in a span of 40 minutes. Once he was arrested, he went through a psych evaluation where they deemed him mentally fit for trial. He was found guilty May 12, 1988, for the murders of Kathleen, the secretary, and James, the random victim, and was sentenced to death. I, Ronald Gene Simmons, Sr., want it to be known that it is my wish and my desire that absolutely no action by anybody be taken to appeal or in any way change this sentence. It is further respectfully requested that the sentence be carried out expeditiously. Then, on February 10th, 1989, he was found guilty for the murder of 14 of his family members, being sentenced to death by lethal injection. The potential motive that the investigators speculated were that they had learned that Ronald's wife had been saving money to get a divorce, and this is why Ronald decided to kill his family. During the trial, Ronald had to be removed from the courtroom for punching the prosecutor, John Bunyan, as well as attempting to acquire one of the deputy's handguns. This all happened after the prosecutor had brought forth evidence of a letter between Ronald and Sheila, his daughter, where he was angry with her for revealing that he was the father of her child and he would see her in hell. Ronald refused to appeal and stated, "To those who oppose the death penalty, in my particular case, anything short of death would be cruel and unusual punishment." Ronald had to be separated from other prisoners as his life was threatened constantly on death row. May 31st, 1990, Arkansas's governor at the time, Bill Clinton, signed the execution warrant. On June 25th, he died by lethal injections. None of his surviving relatives wanted to claim the body, so he was buried in Pottersfield in Lincoln County, Arkansas. While I was doing this research of these killings, I found some not so fun facts, but interesting definition of words I did not know existed. So I'm just going to kind of share them here at the end. Familicide. The type of murder or murder-suicide where an individual kills multiple close family members in quick successions. Most often children, spouses, siblings, or parents. 50% of the time, it ends in suicide. And there's another one, the word is parricide, when only parents are killed. And then family annihilation, where all members of the family are killed. That is it for Ronald Gene Simmons. On to the next. The Phantom Killer. This takes place in Miller County, Arkansas, and Bowie County, Texas. Bowie County, Texas? Bowie? Ooh, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Sorry. Also known as the Texarkana Murderer. 8 people attacked, 5 people died in a 10-week period. This only happened on weekends between February 22nd and May 3rd, and the victims were pairs of female and male. Victim number 1 and number 2, February 22nd, Hollis and Larry. At around 11:45 p.m. on Friday, February 22nd, Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, Mary Jean Larry, 19, drove to Lover's Lane right after the movie together. As we know, Lover's Lane is typically a secluded road with little to no lights. After about 10 minutes of them parking in this area, a man wearing what looked to be a white pillowcase with holes cut out for eyes came up to the driver's side door where Jimmy was and shined a flashlight into the window. Jimmy tells him that he has the wrong person, but the hooded man replied with, "I don't want to kill you, so just do as I say." Jimmy and Mary were then ordered to get out of the car through the driver door. At this time, Jimmy was told to remove his pants and was hit in the head twice with the butt of the hooded man's pistol. Mary thought at first that the man had shot Jimmy because the sound was so loud. Mary thought the man was there to rob them and showed him that they had no money and was then struck down by a blunt object. The hooded man then told her to stand up and run. Mary tried running away into a ditch but was ordered to run up the road instead. As she was running, she saw a car parked off the road, but as she approached the car, she noticed that it was empty. The hooded man confronted her and asked why she was running. Mary stated that he had told her to run, to which he called her a liar and knocked her down yet again, this time sexually assaulting her with the barrel of his gun. Mary was able to run away again this time, running to a house and waking up the owners and phoning the police. At the same time, Jimmy had regained consciousness and told a passing car, who also called the police. Within 30 minutes, police arrived on scene, but the hooded man was nowhere to be seen. Mary and Jimmy were taken to the hospital, where Mary was held overnight for a minor head injury, while Jimmy was kept for several days due to multiple fractures to his skull. During their statement to the police, Mary had told police that the man was a light-skinned black man, while Jimmy told police that he was a tan white man. Both agreed that the man was roughly 6 feet tall. Police believed that Mary and Jimmy knew who the hooded man was and was covering up for him. But why? Victims number 3 and number 4. April 14th. Martin and Booker. Sunday, April 14th at 1:30 a.m., Paul Martin, 17, picked up Betty Jo Booker, 15, for a musical at their local VFW. At 6:30 a.m., Paul's body was found, lying on his left side on the side of the road. There was also blood found on the other side of the road by the fence. He had been shot 4 times. Once through the nose, once through the ribs from behind, once through the right hand, and once through the back of the neck. Betty's body was found at around 11:30 a.m. by a search party almost 2 miles away. Her body was found behind a tree on her back, fully clothed. She was posed so that her right hand was in the pocket of her overcoat. Betty was shot twice, one through the chest and one in the face. The gun was the same for both victims, a .32 Colt pistol. Paul's car was found 3 miles from Betty's body and roughly 1.5 miles from Paul's body. It was parked outside a park with keys still in it. Police were not sure who the first victim was, whether it be Paul or Betty Jo. Examiners did notice that both Paul and Betty had put up a fight. Victims number 5, number 6, May 3rd, the Starks. On May 3rd, a Friday, before 9 p.m., Virgil Starks, 37, and Katie, his wife, who was 36, were in their home about 10 miles from Texarkana. Virgil was in his chair reading his newspaper when he was shot twice in the back of the head from a closed window. Katie went to investigate the sound of broken glass and saw her husband stand up, then fall back into the chair. When Katie realized that Virgil was dead, she ran to the telephone, a wall crank, and called the police. It rang twice before she was shot in the face 2 times from the same window. She fell down, but was able to get back up and attempted to get a pistol from another room. But as she searched, her blood was too much for her to see through. She heard the shooter at the back of the house and ran out the front door. Katie originally ran across the street to her brother-in-law's house, but no one was home, so she ran to a neighbor's house. Katie was able to say, "Virgil's dead," before passing out in front of the neighbor, Prater. Prater shot a rifle into the air to get another neighbor, Elmer, to grab his car. Elmer and the Prater family took Katie to the hospital, where they were questioned by Sheriff W.E. Davis, who became head of this investigation. The first 2 victims were not originally tied to those other cases until May 11th. After investigations took place, with the hundreds of people questioned and false leads followed, police tried a different tactic. Police decided to use teenagers who were recruited to sit in parked cars while officers waited nearby, basically using these teens as bait for this killer. Police officers also volunteered to either sit with partners or sit with mannequins. Some even hid in bushes at secluded parks. The unofficial theory is that the killer was a sex maniac because there was never any cash stolen from any of the victims. After the first two victims, police put out a $500 reward for any information, which ended up leading to false leads. By the next two victims, the reward went up to $1,700. And by the last, it rose to $7,000. Then, 10 days later, $10,000. By November 1948, the Starks were no longer to have been thought tied to the first two incidents because of how everything took place. Now, they never actually caught the killer, and for my Patreon episode, I am going to be diving down the rabbit hole, literal rabbit hole, of how many people they thought could potentially be the killer for all three of these murders. And it is a long list. I was going to add it into this episode, but that list is long. So I'm just going to do it for episode 4 for the Patreon, because it is crazy how many people were questioned, how many people were thought to have potentially been a part of these killings. The list literally goes on, and it's such a wide characteristic difference between literally everyone that was considered to be a possible suspect in these cases, which is crazy. But they never found a killer. They never arrested anyone for these killings. So whoever did this was out there just living a normal life, and we don't know who it is. But with that being said, this was episode 4, Grave Humanity. I am going to get my life on track, which means getting this schedule on track. You might be able to hear my kid yelling in the background. I'm trying to get everything a little more less crazy in this household. So bear with me, but I am hoping to get back on track this year. That's my New Year's resolution. So keep me, what is it called? Keep me aligned, not aligned. Keep me in check, I guess, more or less, to make sure, like, hey, is the episode coming out? Because I don't know, it might be, it might not be, but I'm hoping. But I will see you guys next week. Bye.